I'm going to present the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. And I'm first going to talk about the actors and events and the general history of this terrorist organization. So, first of all, this Islamic State of Iraq and Levant was originally not called Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. It's called Jamaat al-Tawhid wal-Jihad, top here, and it was founded by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, and it originally was in Iraq, but its purpose was just to go against the Shia Muslims in Iraq, which was the majority of the population in Iraq. But this was originally a very small group until the US invasion in Iraq in 2003. So the US invasion of Iraq is part of the Iraq War, which before they justified the reason as because the Saddam Hussein, who was the president of Iraq, was suspected of possessing weapons of mass destruction. So the UN inspectors were sent in 2002 to check if he possessed weapons of mass destruction, and he did not. But in 2003, President Bush secretively sent troops into Iraq to overthrow the Saddam Hussein, and some officials claimed that they suspected that Saddam Hussein was part of the Al-Qaeda. He has links with the Al-Qaeda terrorist group, so that's why they justified their reason. And so the US set up an inter-government led by Ayadi, and he was a Iraqi that wasn't very popular, but this started an Iraqi insurgency that led to lots of armed groups, rebellions by different armed groups. And this picture of this eagle here, it's the Free Syrian Army, which is one of the greatest groups going against the interim government because they dislike the US government, the US influenced government. And the second one is Islamic Front, which is financed by Saudi Arabia. And third one is the organization we're talking about, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and they gained popularity around this time because they were able to because the Sunnis were suppressed when the new government, which was a Shia-led government, went against the Sunnis. So the Sunnis rose, in order to rise against the government, joined this Islamic State, which is still not called Islamic State yet. So, wait. This left top guy is the founder of this organization, and after the US invasion in Iraq, and after this organization gained popularity, it Osama bin Laden had talked with them, and they gained relations with each other, and this organization became the Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and which had help from Al-Qaeda over in Pakistan. And this organization began bombing all around and destroying infrastructures, starting terrorist attacks in Iraq, and protests against the government. So one example is the 1205 Amman bombings. So the Mujahideen Shura Council is the third name to this terrorist organization. It is the combination of Al-Qaeda in Iraq and a lot of other similar armed groups with similar goals. They all wanted to confront the Shia people. So, and in order to keep them from fighting each other, they joined together. Yes. And now this is the fourth name of this organization called the Islamic State of Iraq, which had a different goal. Unlike terrorist organizations, they wanted to gain territory, and actually their final ultimate goal is to form a Sunni state in Iraq. And they were at the start very successful, and led by these two leaders, they were able to take control of 8 provinces in Iraq. But as time grew on, and this organization was poor in governing the area, so there were a lot of human rights abuses and violences against Iraqi civilians. And during this time, the organization was gradually replaced by civilians of Iraqi people, so some began to felt unfair, and they lost popularity eventually, and so this organization declined. And the Anbar Awakening was one of the effects of this decline in popularity. The people in Anbar they were Sunnis supported by the US to protect their own community, and they fought against the Islamic State of Iraq. And then these two leaders, al-Masri and al-Baghdadi, was killed, and then 80% of other leaders were killed, and they were cut off from Al-Qaeda. These things got very, very bad. And then this awesome leader called Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi became leader. This man, he appointed officers from originally the Saddam Hussein regime as their own officers, and this officer took up about a third of all the leaders in this organization, and they were able to join. They wanted to join this Iraq organization because they were all imprisoned by US government, so they disliked the US influenced current Iraqi government. And after there were these officers who joined, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, he declared the Breaking the Walls campaign, which he basically tried to free prisoners from Iraq, and yeah, he freed more than 500 prisoners. So to talk about how they gradually try to conquer Syria, we need to first understand the Syrian civil war. It was originally that the president was Bashar al-Assad, and he is a very tyrannic person. He belongs to the Alawite Shia, which is a minority in Syria, and it caused resentment among the Sunni people and Kurdish people and a lot of others. But more importantly, this was during the Arab Spring, and people thought he would be very democratic, but he failed to deliver promised reforms, and he imprisoned activists when there were democratic elections. So he basically became a dictator. And then there were protests, and he sent armies to kill civilians, and then eventually he had chemical attacks. So lots of armed groups also appear after this person, yeah. And the top left is called the Free Syrian Army. Yeah, okay, the Free Syrian Army, and it is a major group that fought against Iraq. And the second one is the Islamic Front. Anyway, and then the third one is Hezbollah, led by Lebanon. And yeah, they actually all disliked IS, Islamic State of Iraq, very much, because it's just basically a organization that conquered their territory and occupied their land. So even all these rebel groups fought against the Assad government. They also fought against each other. And the very last one on the bottom, Mujahideen Front, they were formed especially against the Islamic State of Iraq. And this map over here shows the territories controlled by different groups in August 18, 2014, and you can see that a great part, the pink part, are occupied by the Islamic State, and the left is mostly occupied by the government, and eventually nothing. And so at last it named itself Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. But before that, there was this organization called Al-Nusra Front, which before was an organization that Al-Baghdadi tried to form in Syria, but there was this Al-Jilani who did not want to merge with Islamic State of Iraq. So eventually Al-Nusra Front and Islamic State of Iraq split apart, and then they fought against each other, many things, and then that made Islamic State of Iraq break relationship with Al-Qaeda, and at this they had an alliance and a peace agreement. The Al-Nusra Front and Islamic State of Iraq had an agreement. And since the Syrian War, the Islamic State of Iraq gained more and more popularity because both governments are harsh Shia government who punish Sunni people, and the Sunni wanted to form a Sunni state, so they joined the Islamic State. So in June 29, 2014, they declared themselves the Islamic State, which means they ignored off Iraq and the Levant. They basically say they are the Islamic State, which indicated that their goal is a lot more global. Like they wanted to maybe start a global jihadist movement, and yeah. And as they gain popularity, Jordan and Saudi Arabia, who bordered Iraq, they sent troops to the borders where the Islamic State conquered to protect themselves, and the Islamic State recruited more troops and gained support from other organizations such as Boko Haram, and also they had human rights abuses like massacring Yazidis. And the Ragat Hussein, which is the daughter of Saddam Hussein, she expressed that she wanted to support Islamic State because they were overthrown, and if they were together, they both wanted to fight the US led government, which actually left in 2011. So, but now Islamic State is the most powerful organization, so yeah. And this is the actors and events which you can see from the other slides that we talked about, that Abu Ayyub al-Masri on the right is one of the person who was part of the Mujahideen Shura Council, and later the leader of Islamic State of Iraq, together with this Abu, the second guy, and then they both died and other things. There you can see breaking the walls and other events. So the current life in the Islamic State. People living in the Islamic State suffered a lot from human rights abuses. So first of all, lots of people died. The Islamic fighters, they killed thousands of civilians, hundreds of prisoners, and they had mass executions. Like, yeah, and they had violence against all kinds of minorities. And this is a quote from UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and United Nations Assistance Mission in Iraq. It states all the things that Iraq did. So, all the things that Islamic State did. They attacked directly, targeting. Yeah, they did a lot of things. before. So they also had those who were willing to become Sunni Muslims and lived in the state. They also had limited freedom. They can listen to music or entertainment or have anything related to Western culture, and the women were forced to wear niqabs, full niqabs, completely cover their face, and people walk around with guns and they have to pray. Yes. So what are the causes of terrorism, like the major causes, and what are the types of conflict? So I chose religion for the main cause of terrorism, which is obvious. And this is a quote from Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. So he said, the Mujahideen have been awarded victory by God after years of jihad, and they were able to achieve their aim and hurry to announce the caliphate and choose the imam. This showed that it's a religious cause, because he believed that the jihad, which is a struggle for freedom or struggle to convert everyone to Muslims, should all be rewarded. So it's something that they should do because they can be rewarded by God. So that's a religious motivation for people to do the jihad. And oppression is the that a state oppress the people or a minority of the people, and then the people think because of this they have a reason to rebel and become terrorists. And for Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, I think this is a very major reason, because Syria's President Assad is a tyrant, and Iraq's new government is also Shia, and because there are a lot of Sunnis in between, so they feel suppressed. And this quote says, this have underlined the deliberate inflammation of sectarian conflict between Iraqi Shias and Sunnis during the Iraq War by various Sunni and Shia players as the root cause of ISIL's rise. So it says that an increase of fighting between Sunni and Shias causes ISIL to rise. And usually this fighting between Sunni and Shia is one-sided, because the Shia is the government. And for the type of conflict that ISIL is experiencing, I again chose religious, which is obvious. And I quote from the BuzzFeed website. It said, ISIS survives in part thanks to funding from global jihadi groups, as the Syrian conflict descended from a largely non-violent uprising. So basically in the first sentence it explained that this is a religious issue. So those with the same religion help each other to fight. So the global jihadi groups are funding ISIS because they believe that this is a religious conflict. So that's why I believe this is a religious conflict too. Yeah, the end. Thank you.